My daughter yelled at me, "You are going to be in a nursing home." She wanted to get rid of me by calling me a burden, but I decided to get back at her. 7 days later, she came running to me with tears in her eyes. "No, don't sell. My house, please." But I didn't even blink. Not after what she said to me that Sunday morning. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. It started when my grandson, Ethan, knocked over a vase in the living room. I told him calmly to be careful with the glass near the rug. That's it. I didn't yell. I didn't scold him. I just asked him to be careful. 2 minutes later, my daughter Rachel came storming out of the kitchen and into the living room with that tight, passive-aggressive tone I've learned to recognize over the years. "Mom, if you can't keep quiet, then maybe it's time you stop interfering altogether." I sat back in the armchair, stunned. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't even moved. "I just told Ethan to be careful," I said. "He almost got cut." Rachel folded her arms. "He's a child. You don't need to supervise everything. Honestly, it's becoming exhausting having you here every single day, watching over us like some kind of hawk." That's when I said, "Ew." I looked her right in the eyes and asked, "Exhausting for who, Rachel? For you or for me?" She didn't answer at first. Then she just snapped. "You are going to be in a nursing home. Do you understand me? You're a burden. This house is already full and I'm tired of rearranging our lives for you." That word, burden, echoed in my chest. I didn't reply. I didn't fight back. I just got up from the chair, walked to my room and closed the door behind me. I didn't cry. I stared at the wall. I stayed still for a long time. Rachel had no idea the kind of pain she'd just opened up. I'd spent the last 12 years living in this house, ever since Harold, my husband, passed. I helped raise her 2 kids. I picked them up from school, cooked dinner, helped with bills when things got tight. I paid the utilities for the first 5 years. When their roof leaked, I gave her the $12,000 she needed. No interest, no conditions, and I never reminded her of it. But now I was a burden. That night, while the rest of the house slept, I got out the brown file box I kept under my bed. I hadn't looked at it in years. It contained only 2 things: a faded manila envelope with the original property deed and a folder labeled Title Transfer Documents. I had forgotten some of the details myself. When Harold passed and left me the insurance payout, Rachel had just gone through a nasty divorce. She and the kids were living in a rental apartment. She cried when she asked for help. I didn't think twice. I bought this house in full, put it in my name, and moved in with her so she wouldn't be alone. I thought we were rebuilding together. But she never paid a cent on this property, not 1 cent. I stared at the deed for a long time. Name of owner, Margaret Collins. My name, not Rachel's, not David's. Mine. I felt something shift inside me that night. A cold, hard realization. They had rewritten the story in their heads. Over time, I became a guest in my own home, and Rachel was planning to evict me from it. I didn't sleep much. At dawn, I made a pot of coffee, waited for everyone to leave, and then called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 10 years. Linda Farrell, my old neighbor from Southport. She had become a licensed real estate broker. She picked up on the second ring. "Margaret Collins," she said. "You're the last person I expected to hear from. Is everything all right?" "I need a market estimate on my house," I said. Discreetly, she paused. "You're thinking of selling?" "I'm not thinking," I said. "I'm deciding." We set an appointment for the next afternoon. I told Rachel I'd be at the doctor. She didn't care enough to ask for details. When Linda came, she brought a professional camera, a notepad, and her sharp business instincts. She walked the property, took notes, and said, "This place could easily list for $380,000. Maybe more if you do a deep clean and declutter." I laughed once, bitterly. "Declutter meaning what? Kick my daughter's Peloton and her husband's beer fridge out of the garage?" Linda smiled, but she understood. And I liked it that way. I made myself a sandwich for dinner, sat on the small couch, and turned on the TV. Nothing special. Just the evening news, but no yelling, no doors slamming, no one asking what's for dinner, no one calling me a burden. That silence wasn't empty. It was necessary. 2 days later, I went back to the old house for the final walkthrough. Linda met me at the curb. Rachel and David had already moved out. The keys were ready. We walked through the house one last time together. Linda made a few notes, signed off on the condition, and asked if I was okay. "I'm fine," I said. "Just ready to move on." She handed me a pen and pointed to the last signature line. "Once you sign this, it's officially theirs." I signed without hesitation. As we walked out, I left the keys on the kitchen counter and closed the door behind me. No one chased me this time. No one begged. No one told me I was making a mistake. The house was gone. But more importantly, the weight of what it represented was gone too. That weekend, I invited my friend Jean to visit. She brought muffins. We sat on the patio of my new apartment. She asked me if I missed the old place. "No," I said. "Not even a little." She looked surprised. "After all those years? I stayed there too long," I said. "Staying doesn't mean belonging." Jean didn't press. She understood. Rachel texted me the following week. "Rachel, I hope you're settling in okay. The kids ask about you every day." I waited a few hours before replying. "Me. I'm doing well. I'll let you know when I'm ready to visit." She didn't reply right away, but I had already said what mattered. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one adjusting my life for everyone else. I had no one asking for money, or space, or time. No one accusing me of doing too much or not enough. I wasn't waiting for permission to be treated with dignity. I took it back. And Rachel? She'll remember what she said that morning, how she called me a burden, how she tried to push me out of the house I bought. But more importantly, she'll remember how I walked away and took the house with me, because the truth is, I was never the burden. I was the foundation, and when I moved, the whole structure had to shift. They were young enough to adapt, older than toddlers, but still small enough to believe that change was always temporary. I knew better. On Monday, the moving truck came. I stood on the porch while they loaded up the first round of boxes. Rachel walked out and stood beside me. "It's strange watching it all go," she said. "It was never yours to keep," I replied. She didn't argue. By evening, their rooms were empty. The house echoed more than usual. The fridge had only condiments left. The curtains were still up, but that would be the last thing to go. Their plan was to leave Wednesday morning. The final walkthrough was scheduled for Thursday. I'd hand over the keys, sign the last page, and be done with this house for good. On Tuesday night, Rachel came into my room. "I know we're not there yet," she said, "but I hope we can rebuild something. Eventually." I nodded. "Maybe." She looked down at her hands. "I'll miss having you in the house." "You didn't act like it." "I know." Then she left. That night, I didn't sleep much. I sat by the window, looking out at the yard I used to tend myself, the rose bushes Harold planted, the cracked walkway I paid to repair, the porch we painted together 15 summers ago. I wasn't going to miss this place. I was going to miss the version of myself that thought it would be my forever home. But that version of me had already been pushed aside years ago. Now I was leaving on my own terms. Wednesday morning came quiet and cold. I was already dressed before anyone else woke up. I folded my pajamas, zipped the last suitcase, and set the coffee to brew one final time in that kitchen. Rachel came downstairs in her slippers, her hair still damp from the shower. She paused when she saw me placing the last box near the door. "You're leaving today?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes. The lease on the new apartment starts this morning." She stood there for a second, eyes scanning the nearly empty house. "It feels different now," It is different, I said. David came down a few minutes later. He greeted me with a nod, picked up a box, and carried it out to his car. He didn't say anything else, and I didn't expect him to. The kids came last. Emma hugged me tight. Ethan, too young to understand the weight of the moment, asked if he could visit my new place sometime. I smiled and told him we'd see. Rachel made coffee. She poured 2 cups, one for her, one for me. We sat in the kitchen, no longer cluttered with school papers and grocery bags. It was bare now, sterile. Just 2 mugs and a memory of what used to be normal. You don't have to rush, she said. You can stay another day if you want. No, I said. Today is the right day. She didn't argue. At 10:30 a.m., the movers I hired for myself arrived. They were fast and efficient. They loaded the boxes, double-checked the list, and confirmed the destination. I walked from room to room once more. The house looked smaller, empty. It always does. The walls were scuffed. The carpet in the hallway had stains nobody ever tried to remove. The door to my old room creaked like always. I looked inside one last time and closed it gently. Rachel stood by the front door when I was ready to leave. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but she didn't know how. So I made it easier. I hope this teaches you something, I said. She nodded slowly. It has. I didn't hug her. I didn't reach for her hand. I just walked past her, opened the door, and stepped out. She followed me to the porch. I meant what I said the other night, she added. I do want to fix things. I know it won't happen now, but maybe later. We'll see, I replied. I got in the passenger seat of the moving van. The driver had insisted I ride along for safety. I looked back once. Rachel was still standing on the porch. The kids had come out, waving from the steps. I waved back, and then the house disappeared from the mirror. When we reached the new apartment complex, it was nothing fancy. Just a clean building with simple landscaping and wide walkways. The kind of place where the neighbors say hello in the hall, but keep to themselves. The manager handed me the keys and walked me through the unit. Fresh paint, laminate floors, working, appliances. No memories attached, no ghosts, no insults. Within 2 hours, all my boxes were in. By late afternoon, I had already unpacked the basics: clothes, dishes, bedding. The space was quiet. But the real reason, why Grandma was selling the house and why Mommy was crying in her bedroom every night, was kept from them. David, for once, took the lead on the logistics. He spoke to a moving company, found a storage unit, and finalized their temporary stay with his brother in Springfield. It wasn't ideal, but at least they had a plan. A month ago, he was laughing at the idea of me being in a nursing home. Now he was folding Rachel's blouses and wrapping dishes in newspaper. And me? I stayed out of their way. My room, still the smallest in the house, was nearly empty. My things were packed. I had made a deposit on a 1-bedroom unit in a 55-plus complex, a few miles from here. It was small, but clean and quiet, with a patio and a view of the parking lot. That was all I needed. On Tuesday, I called Linda to confirm the final walkthrough and asked her to send over the buyer's checklist. Everything was moving forward exactly as planned. That evening, while Rachel was out buying more boxes, David knocked on my door. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, going through some of Harold's old tax files before shredding them. He leaned against the doorframe and cleared his throat. "Hey," he said. I looked up. "Something wrong?" "No, just, I've been thinking about everything." I didn't respond. He continued. "Rachel's been different lately, quieter. I think this whole thing broke something in her. Not just the house. The way you stood up for yourself. The way you didn't yell. You just moved, took action. She never saw you like that before." "I never gave her a reason to," I said. "She's trying. I can tell. She just doesn't know how to fix it. She doesn't have to fix anything," I said. "She just has to understand that I'm not the one who needs fixing." He nodded and looked down. I don't know if she'll say it out loud, but I think she's sorry. I'm not waiting for an apology, I said. I'm waiting for them to pack. He gave a short laugh. Fair enough. On Wednesday morning, Rachel and I crossed paths in the hallway. She looked like she hadn't slept. I wanted to ask if you wanted to take the armchair with you, she said. The blue one from the living room. I know it was Harold's. I shook my head. No. Let the kids keep using it. She nodded, then stepped aside to let me pass. That was our entire conversation for the day. The following weekend, the house looked more like a warehouse than a home. Stacks of boxes in the dining room, suitcases in the hallway, furniture half-wrapped, in plastic. The kitchen cabinets were nearly empty. The garage was finally cleared out, something they hadn't done in years. On Sunday morning, Rachel made pancakes. She didn't ask anyone what they wanted. She just made them. She placed a plate in front of me without a word. It was the first time she'd done something like that since the beginning of this entire ordeal. I ate in silence. Halfway through breakfast, she sat across from me. I've been thinking about what you said, about the way I treated you. I kept eating. She continued. I made you feel like a guest in your own home. You didn't make me feel that way, I said. You made me be that. She took a deep breath. I'm not proud of that. I let my stress become entitlement. I stopped seeing everything you were doing for us. I started expecting it. I didn't interrupt. I was wrong, and I know I hurt you. What I said that day, I don't even recognize that version of myself. I finally looked at her. But you meant it. She flinched. In the moment, yes, I did. At least you're honest, I said. She blinked fast and nodded. I didn't expect you to ever fight back, she said quietly. That's what scared me. You didn't yell. You didn't argue. You just moved, signed papers, called a realtor. It felt like the floor dropped out. I've lived my whole life making sure everyone else had a floor to stand on, I said. Now I'm building one for myself. She didn't speak for a while. I'm glad you're not going to that nursing home, she said, almost in a whisper. That was a horrible thing for me to say. Yes, I said. It was. I hope you'll be happy where you're going. I will be, I said. That night, David and Rachel sat the kids down in the living room and explained the final move-out date. They said it was time to start fresh, that sometimes families needed to find new spaces. The kids asked a few questions but didn't cry. She looked at me, tired. Not angry, not resentful, just worn out. I don't think you understand what this is doing to us. I nodded. And I don't think you ever understood what this has done to me. I was overwhelmed, she said. That day when I said what I said, I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't interrupt her. I let her finish. I've been juggling work, the kids, bills, and then you. Say it, I said. Then me? What? You were always watching, always correcting, and sometimes it just felt like one more thing. You mean accountability? I asked. You mean reminding your son not to leave toys in the hallway after I tripped? Or telling your daughter not to pour juice on the couch? She looked down. I wasn't trying to control your life, Rachel. I was trying to help, but I should have known you didn't see it that way. She was quiet again. After a few seconds, she asked, Where are you going? I've arranged to rent a furnished apartment across town for now. It's small, but quiet. I'll stay there until I find something permanent. She nodded. I thought maybe you'd stay with Aunt Caroline. I don't want to be a burden, I said flatly. She winced. I meant for her to feel it. We didn't speak again that night. The next morning, she didn't come out of her room. David took the kids to school. I loaded more boxes and labeled them. I kept my door open. I wasn't hiding anything. That afternoon, a representative from the buyers came to walk through the house again. She was kind, polite, maybe mid-40s. Her name was Jeanette. She walked through the bedrooms, the kitchen, took a few notes on her tablet. She complimented the backyard. She said the buyers were excited to raise a family here. That part stung a little. but I smiled anyway. Rachel wasn't home during the visit. She returned just as Jeanette was leaving. She watched her walk down the front path, then turned to me. "They're moving in right after we move out?" "Yes." 2 days after? She didn't say anything else. Later that evening, she came into the living room with a notebook in her hand. "I made a list of rentals in the area," she said. "Most are too expensive. David doesn't qualify on his own income, and we're still waiting on a response from that townhouse." I nodded. She kept talking. "We might have to move in with his brother temporarily. They live in Springfield. It's not ideal, but it's something." "I'm glad you're figuring it out," I said. She closed the notebook. "I wish you'd talked to me before doing all this." I looked her in the eyes. "I tried. For years." Rachel sat on the armrest of the couch. She looked tired. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled back. There was no performance this time, just reality. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it," she said. "You thought I'd let it go. Again. I thought you'd never leave." I swallowed hard. That's the problem. The next morning, David knocked on my door. "We found a place," he said. "It's small, but it'll do for now. That's good. We'll be out a few days before the closing." "Thank you." He hesitated before leaving. "You should know. Rachel's been crying every night. She's not handling this well." I stayed quiet. "She's not used to being the one left behind." "I wasn't either," I said. He left. By the end of that week, the mood in the house changed. The kids were told. Rachel said something vague about moving to a new place for a fresh start. They didn't understand, but they nodded. Boxes started appearing in their hallway. Furniture was being marked with sticky notes. There were whispers behind doors and awkward silences during meals. But I kept packing, one box at a time. The house that once belonged to me in name only was finally becoming mine again. Soon, I would leave it behind on my own terms. And they would leave it with the understanding that nothing is ever guaranteed just because you feel entitled to it. 3 weeks. That's how long we had. Left in the house after the buyers signed the final documents and set the closing date, Rachel stopped trying to change my mind. She spent most of her time organizing things in silence. She took photos of old toys to sell online, sorted kitchen items, and packed up her closet in small batches. The kids were told they'd be moving into a new home for a little while. "But then you decided I didn't belong here." Her expression softened for a brief second, but then hardened again. "I said something awful." "I know I did. I was angry. I was tired. I didn't mean it." "You said I was a burden." No. And that I should go to a nursing home." She lowered her eyes. "I was wrong." I leaned forward slightly. "Do you know what it feels like to give up your retirement, your peace, your independence, for your child, and then be told you're a nuisance?" She didn't answer. "Do you know what it's like to sit in a room you paid for, in a house you bought, and feel like a guest?" Still no answer. "I was invisible in this house, Rachel, until the day you decided to erase me completely." She wiped at her face quickly. "So this is revenge?" "No," I said. "This is self-respect." She sat back and looked up at the ceiling, trying to hold back tears. "What are we going to tell the kids?" "That's your choice," I said. "But I suggest you tell them the truth." A long silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke again. "I can't stop you. I get that now. But I hope you know, this will change everything." "It already did," I said. That night, she didn't speak to me again. The next morning, Linda sent over the formal contract for my review. The buyer had accepted all terms, including the extended move-out window. I signed and returned the paperwork. Closing was now officially scheduled. There was no turning back. Rachel avoided me for the next 2 days. David didn't say a word, either. On Friday, the kids came home from school and asked me if we were moving. I told them yes, but not yet. Rachel hadn't spoken to them. I could tell. That night, I heard her crying in her room. The door was closed, but I recognized the sound. I didn't go in. I didn't say anything. I just sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and waited. On Saturday morning, Rachel asked to talk again. We sat in the backyard. I called the mortgage company, she said. We're going to try to qualify for a loan. There's a townhouse not far from here. It's small, but it's something. I nodded. That's good. She looked down at her hands. We'll probably have to move before closing, just to be safe. That's smart. Another silence. Are you staying with anyone after this? She asked. I shook my head. I'll rent something for a while, then maybe buy something smaller. Do you need help with that? I looked at her for a long moment. No, I said. But thank you for asking. She nodded. For the first time in years, there was no resentment between us in that moment, just truth and silence. Later that afternoon, I began packing my room. The packing started slowly. I didn't have much, at least not anymore. A few photo albums, my clothes, some old cookware, a box of Harold's books I hadn't touched in years. Everything I owned could fit into 5 or 6 cardboard boxes. By the end of Sunday, I had sealed 3. Rachel didn't say much. She floated between silence and strained politeness. David was still in some kind of denial. I caught him once walking through the living room, looking around the space like it would magically undo itself, like someone was going to call and say, it was all a big misunderstanding. But it wasn't. On Monday morning, I received a call from Linda confirming that the title company had started the paperwork. I asked her to send over the final schedule and paperwork for me to review. I wanted to be prepared. Everything had to go by the book. That afternoon, I printed a copy of the formal notice to vacate and placed it on the kitchen counter. It wasn't necessary. I had every legal right to proceed without it. But I wanted Rachel and David to understand that this wasn't personal anymore. This was a process. At 6:30 p.m., Rachel saw the document. She didn't speak. She picked it up, read it, then placed it back down. David was the first to react. Really? You're giving us a written notice? Like we're tenants? I didn't answer. That's what this is now? He asked. You want us out like we're squatters in some rental? You are tenants, I said calmly. You've been living here without any rent agreement for over a decade. You never paid utilities. You never helped with the property taxes. You never invested a dime into this house. Rachel stepped in. We didn't know we had to. No, I said. You just assumed you never would. David scoffed and walked out. Rachel stayed. But this is too much. I meant what I said, I replied. Tears rolled down her face. Where are we going to go? I don't know, I said honestly, but you'll figure it out. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her disappointment. I wasn't afraid of guilt. I wasn't afraid of her tears, because she had made it clear that I didn't belong, and now she would learn what it meant to lose something she thought she owned. The next few days passed with a tension so thick it touched everything. Meals were quiet. Nobody sat together. Rachel barely looked at me, and David avoided being home at all. The kids didn't understand why their parents were arguing behind closed doors. They only knew that something was wrong and that Mommy was crying more than usual. The inspection went through without issues. The buyers were still interested and had agreed to move forward with the purchase. Linda called on Tuesday morning to let me know the closing date had been set for 32 days from now. 32 days, and this chapter would end. I waited until dinner time to say something. Rachel was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, clicking furiously, her jaw tight. She hadn't spoken to me all day. The children had eaten already. I quietly made myself a plate and sat across from her. They accepted the counteroffer, I said. She looked up slowly. What counteroffer? The buyers. I asked them for 2 extra weeks to give you time. They agreed. Rachel closed her laptop with a loud snap. So now you're being generous? No, I said calmly. I'm being reasonable. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. You're really going to do this? I already did, I replied. She shook her head and looked away. This isn't you. It's been me this whole time. You just stopped seeing it. Her voice was cold. What are you trying to prove? I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm setting a boundary that should have been in place a long time ago. She stood up and left the kitchen without another word. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The guest room I'd been using all these years had never really felt like mine. Not with Rachel's old posters still taped to the closet door. Not with the broken blinds that no one ever bothered to replace. The mattress was lumpy, the nightstand drawer didn't close properly, and the overhead light flickered sometimes. I never complained. I realized I didn't even have a room in this house. I just had a space that nobody else wanted. The next morning, Rachel left the house early. She didn't say where she was going. Around 9:30, David came into the kitchen while I was drinking coffee. He looked tired and nervous. He hadn't shaved in days. I need to talk to you, he said. I didn't respond. He sat down across from me. Rachel's taking this hard. She's not used to being told no, especially not by you. I stayed silent. He rubbed his hands together. You were right about the money. We never paid for this place. We let you take care of everything, and we never said thank you. And now, she feels like she's losing everything. She never had it, I said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, but she believed she did. That's not my responsibility. I know. But can I ask something? I looked at him. What happens if we can't find a place in time? You have 32 days, I said. His shoulders slumped. So that's it? That's it. He stood up. You're really not backing down? No, I said. I'm not. Rachel came home just after 2 p.m. She walked straight to her room. The door slammed shut. I didn't follow her. At 4:15, she came back out and asked me to come into the living room. Her tone wasn't angry, just flat. I sat on the far end of the couch. She sat across from me in the armchair. She held a folder in her hands. I spoke to a lawyer this morning, she said. I raised an eyebrow. I wanted to know if we had any legal standing, if David and I could contest the sale. And? I asked. She opened the folder and showed me a printed document. She confirmed what you said. The deed is in your name, sole ownership. You can sell it without our consent. There's nothing we can do. I nodded. Rachel exhaled slowly. I always assumed we'd inherit this place someday, that when you passed, it would just become ours. I never thought you'd actually pull the rug out from under us. I never planned to, I said. Rachel broke the silence. You listed the house. I nodded. Yes. You didn't even mention it. I didn't think it was something I needed your permission for. This is our home. No, I said firmly. It's mine. David scoffed. You think that's going to hold up? We've lived here for over a decade. This isn't a rental, Margaret. We've put money into this house. I turned to face him. No, I put money into this house. You haven't paid a dime. Neither of you have. Rachel stood up. Her voice was shaking. How could you do this? Where are we supposed to go? I raised an eyebrow. To Brantwood, maybe? That was your suggestion, wasn't it? She didn't respond. Her eyes narrowed, but she stayed quiet. I walked past her to the kitchen, opened the drawer where we keep loose papers, and pulled out the original copy of the deed. I placed it gently on the table and slid it toward her. This is the name on the title. Margaret Collins, not Rachel Daniels, not David Daniels, just me. She stared at it but didn't touch it. That's outdated, David muttered. That was from when you bought it. We've been here for 13 years. That must mean something. It means you've lived here. That's all it means. You have no ownership, no equity. You're tenants. And I'm the landlord. Rachel shook her head. We built a life here. I nodded. And you built it on land that was never yours. You just forgot that part. She stepped away, hands shaking now. What are you trying to do? Ruin us. Humiliate us. Are you seriously going to evict your own daughter and grandchildren? I looked her in the eyes. You called me a burden, Rachel. You told me to go to a nursing home. You made it clear you were tired of me. So I'm just freeing you from that burden. She stared at me for a long time and then left the room. David spoke up finally. So what? You're just going to kick your family out on the street? I didn't say that, I replied. You'll have time, but the house is going on the market, and it's going to sell. That's not negotiable. He finished his beer and tossed the can into the trash. You're unbelievable. I didn't answer him. There was nothing left to explain. The next morning, Rachel refused to speak to me. She fed the kids and left for work without a word. David stayed home. Around 11 a.m., he knocked on my door. Look, he said, I don't agree with how Rachel spoke to you the other day, but this isn't the way to handle it. You blindsided us. I know exactly how it feels to be blindsided, I said. He sighed. We can talk about this. Maybe figure out a compromise. You want us to pay rent? Fine, we'll start paying. I crossed my arms. Now you want to pay. 13 years. Too late, he stayed quiet. David, let's stop pretending. You and Rachel never saw this house as mine. You treated me like a guest, like an old lady who should be grateful to have a roof over her head. But you forgot who gave you that roof? He nodded slowly, then left. That afternoon, Linda came by, again with the offers. Rachel was still at work, David was avoiding me, and the kids were napping. We sat at the dining table. This one is clean, Linda said, pointing to the top sheet. No contingencies. All cash. They want to close in 30 days. They even offered to take it as is. I looked over the paperwork, every detail neatly typed and highlighted. I could feel my heart beating faster. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said quietly. I know, Linda replied. I just want to live somewhere where I'm not treated like a problem to solve. You deserve that. I signed the document. The next morning, the buyers scheduled a formal inspection. At 4:15 p.m., Rachel got home and saw the orange inspection tag on the front gate. She stormed inside. You're really doing this? I already did it. She stood there, silent for a moment, then walked toward the hallway. She stopped halfway. I can't believe I have to explain this to the kids. What am I supposed to say? That Grandma kicked us out? Tell them the truth, I said. Tell them I owned the house. Tell them you forgot that. She didn't say anything else. That evening, she came into my room. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red. She held a cup of tea in her hands but hadn't touched it. Don't sell the house, please, she whispered. I didn't answer right away. I didn't mean what I said the other day, she continued. I was angry. I was overwhelmed. She saw more than just square footage. She saw humiliation tucked into every corner of this house. I'm ready, I said. List it, under my name. No warning. By the time Rachel got home that night, the listing was scheduled. Linda had a professional draft of the online post with pictures and a contact form. It would go live by the end of the week. The idea that she would wake up one morning and find her house, my house, on the market, it gave me back something I hadn't felt in years. Control. Over the next few days, I watched Rachel closely. She had no idea. She floated around the house like a queen, gave me side eyes when I corrected the kids, rolled her eyes when I reminded her to take meat out of the freezer. And David? That man didn't say 10 words to me unless it was to ask about dinner. I kept quiet. I stayed out of their way. But every time I passed the hallway mirror, I looked into my own eyes and whispered the same sentence. You are not a burden. Linda called again the next morning. We already have 2 interested buyers. One of them's offering in cash. I nodded. Let's show it this Saturday. Open house. Make it look like a private walkthrough. Margaret, she said slowly, are you ready for the fallout? I thought for a moment. You don't survive raising 2 kids on a part-time nurse's salary, bury your husband, give up your retirement, raise your grandkids, and still be called a burden without learning how to face a little fallout. That Friday night, Rachel was in the kitchen when she brought it up. By the way, Mom, I was talking to David about options, for your future. There's this retirement home near Brantwood. It's modern, clean. I thought we could go see it next week. I looked up from the dishes. My hands were trembling, but I didn't let her see. I see. You'll like it, and we'll still visit, she said casually. You'll finally get some independence. That word again, independence. I had to grip the edge of the counter to steady myself. The open house was set for 10:30 a.m. the next morning. Linda would be there early. I left a note taped to the front door for Rachel and David, stepping out. For errands. Please don't disturb the visitors. They're with me. They were still asleep when I left. At exactly 10:33, I watched from the sidewalk as Linda greeted the first couple. They smiled as she showed them around. Linda knew what she was doing, emphasizing the backyard, the updated appliances, the hardwood floors, all things I had paid for, all things they had taken for granted. By noon, we had 4 offers. At 12:17, I got the text from Rachel. What the hell is going on? There are strangers walking through our house. At 12:22, I responded, no, my house. I turned off my phone. After that, the moment I turned my phone back on, it was flooded with messages from Rachel. At first, they were confused. Mom, what's going on? Why are there people walking around the house? Then annoyed. You didn't say anything about selling the house. This is insane. And then furious. Is this a joke? Did you list our house without telling anyone? This is beyond selfish. I sat quietly on a park bench a few blocks from the house, holding my phone but not responding. I could already imagine the chaos inside. Rachel pacing around, looking for me. David probably still in his robe, trying to figure out how to get strangers out of his garage. The kids, most likely glued to their tablets, unaware that the house around them was being measured, evaluated, discussed. It was 1:10 p.m. when the first voicemail came through. Rachel's voice was sharp and tense. I don't know what game you're playing, Mom, but this is not your decision to make. We all live here. You can't just sell the house without talking to us. You're being irrational and vindictive. Call me back, now. I didn't call back. I needed time to think. I needed to stay calm. I knew this was only the beginning. I walked home at 3 p.m. Linda had already left. She texted me earlier to say the showings went well. One of the buyers submitted a formal offer on the spot, above asking price. She asked if I wanted to review it that evening. I told her to wait. I wanted Rachel to understand exactly where she stood first. When I walked in, the living room was dead silent. Rachel sat on the couch, arms crossed, jaw clenched. David stood by the kitchen island with a beer in hand. Typical. He didn't even greet me.